eventually they're going to install 900 megawatts of wind and solar right in the heart of Mpumalanga's coal belt, which of course is a great contributor to the just energy transition, creating jobs for coal miners and for people who've invested in coal for many years. You look at a company like Anglo converting some of their trucks to hydrogen, which they are fueling with a hydrogen plant that they've built on site. Increasingly, we are seeing that we are able to attract more private sector generation capacity to the grid. We see it in our stats, people who connect to the grid. We also see it in numbers collated at NERSA. There's more than 9,000 megawatts of new capacity that is either in the process of being built or in the process of going through engineering, financial close, and EIA processes to get connected to the grid. So our anticipation is that from calendar 2024 onwards, we should see a reduction in the incidence of load shedding. I think the important thing to emphasize, though, is that we shouldn't stop there. We have an aging fleet, we have an unreliable fleet that has been poorly maintained, and we should not sit back and become complacent again and think that we've now got 9,000 megawatts on the grid. We've got to double down and we've got to accelerate the capacity. And this is, Roger, where I think the President's structural reforms that he implemented in his speech on the 25th of July last year hasn't nearly got the credit that he should have for liberalizing the generation sector. And I think many of your members are taking advantage of it.
Well, André, yes, absolutely. And let me make the comment that as the Minerals Council, we met with the Presidency, with the EIUG and FAPA back in February last year. We injected some people into the Presidency to help with understanding what the specific constraints were. The constraints were not specific to Eskom. The constraints were more environmental lead times to authorization for environmental permits, taking 18 months. In fact, I said to the President, André, jokingly, I said, Mr. President, how is it possible that a mining company with an established EIA has to wait 18 months to get approval for a environmental authorization for a solar project? I mean, shouldn't it just piggyback off the existing EIA? And the President joked back to me saying, Roger, I think I need to go to that department and find out what they do. That was his comment. So I think what we've done is we, through the reforms that have come out, the electricity recovery plan that came out in July, those are the biggest structural reforms that we've seen in South Africa in 25 years, in my view. They basically unlock the private sector's capability to invest in the energy system, which is what we also need in certain other critical aspects of the vascular system, which we talked about a bit earlier. So let me ask André this particular point. It's just my take is that these reforms are incredibly important. They will unlock a huge amount of capacity. In mining alone, we've got 10 gigawatts of projects that our companies are looking at investing in, probably $10 billion worth of investments that will come on stream. But there are some critical, those will only come on stream in 18, 24, 36, 48 months' time. And there are some critical short-term blockages. Just your take on the short-term blockages, because again, we're sitting in load shedding, stage 3, stage 4 the last couple of days. On Friday, it was up to stage 6. So people are not seeing the short-term. In the short term, there's obviously some real generational challenges, but in the medium-term, prospects are starting to look a little bit brighter. And I guess the question is, the transmission, state transmission company, etc. Those things seem to have taken a lot of time. What's holding us back?
Yeah, Roger, we are country number 106 to embark on the structural reform of unbundling a monolithic, monopolistic power utility. So we are by no means at the bleeding edge of utility reform. We are following a well-trodden path. And in fact, this unbundling, as it's called, has been mooted now for essentially the better part of 30 years. And we haven't yet got down to actually making it work. And
what's holding it back?
That's exactly the point. So at Eskom, we have done everything that we can. We've concluded an asset transfer agreement. We have set up the National Transmission Company, South Africa Limited. We have set up separate balance sheets, income statements. We have separated at a SAP level. Those of you who've been through that will know that's no minor exercise. So we've done everything in our power to enable the legal separation of our transmission business. Now, why is this so important? It is so important because investors want the assurance that their bids into an electricity market will be considered on an equitable basis with Eskom Generation's bid. So if there is some suspicion that somehow Eskom gets a peep into what the bids are so that they can undercut the market to the detriment of private investors, then obviously people aren't going to invest. And that is why this independent transmission system and market operator is such an incredibly important enabler to accelerating further private sector generation investment. Now, we are still waiting for a number of licenses. We are waiting for some legislative changes, and that has not been happening as quickly as it should have. Now, kudos to Operation Vulindlela, led by Rudy Dix in the presidency. They have been pushing incredibly hard to make this happen faster, and I really hope that we can make this happen as quickly as possible. A simple thing like appointing the board of directors for NTCSA. That's now taken, this month it will be a year since we submitted a list, a thoroughly vetted and considered, well balanced from demographics, gender, skill, to our shareholder, and we just haven't been able to appoint those directors. So I think there are some easy wins that we can deliver, confidence building measures that are required that will encourage even more investors to come in and put skin in the game, money into the ground when it comes to putting more megawatts on the grid.
So, Andre, our view is very much aligned to the fact that getting the state transmission company set up as quickly as possible is not only crucial from the perspective of developing our day-forward market with an independent system market operator, which gives the confidence to the market participants to participate in that particular market, but also from a capital raising point of view to spend the money which is required for strengthening the network. I mean, there's been various figures handed around of 80, 100 billion rand required to strengthen the transmission network. Obviously, there are some moves, and again, it's part of the electricity market reforms that the President announced of expediting the expropriation of land for the development of transmission infrastructure, because you don't have expropriation powers like Eskom might have had 30 years ago. So we're certainly in alignment on that, but again, I think the issue that from the business perspective, from the mining perspective, is critical speed. We don't have time to waste. Every electron is one electron more that we can have, and I guess the challenge that we have with 84 rand, 85 rand per kilowatt in unserved energy from an economic cost on the economy is just so huge, not just for mining, but for the economy as a whole. So let me, again, just in terms of other potential bottlenecks that we need to resolve, because we've seen quite significant progress on shortening of the environmental authorization times. If a project's registered as a SIP project, it's down to 53 days from 18 months. We've halved the Eskom grid tie connection time. NERSA are doing their bit in terms of 14 days, I think it's taking to get a registration completed, which again is so we're getting, the building blocks are starting to form together quite nicely. What we need to do is to get a crescendo of activity around private sector investment in this. But I guess at the same time, it's the 6 units that you've been focusing on as Eskom to bring those back into a greater degree of reliability. You want to say a couple of words about that? And I'd be interested in getting your views on any of the other short-term bottlenecks that we should be focusing on as business.
I think we have been doing a lot of maintenance. We have ramped up our maintenance spend at our coal-fired power stations over the past 3 years. But as you know, these outages take a long time to plan. The replacement items, the spares, some of them have a 2-year lead time. So even if you place the order today, it's 2 years before you can commence the outage. They also require money. And some of our customers don't pay us. For example, the municipalities now owe us, some of them, total of 57 billion rand, and that's money that we need in order to carry out our maintenance program. So our constraints are very considerable and structural. So we've been paying a lot of attention at some of our power stations that have been particularly problematic: Tutuko, Majuba, Matla, Kendal, and so forth. And I think these are the power stations that have potential. But I think we must also acknowledge that a power station like Tutuko really is still in the grip of crime, not to put too fine a point to it. If you look at the incredible theft that we've encountered and uncovered at Tutuko, the fact that this is where the power station general manager walks around on his plant accompanied by bodyguards and wearing a bulletproof vest, that is no longer normal. And if you look at the fact that Tutuko year to date is delivering an EAF of between 15 and 17%, which is shocking for one of the younger plants in our fleet, then it shows that unless we get to grips with some of the structural issues around Eskom, the theft, the crime, the corruption, we will not be able to resolve the issue. Now, fortunately, and I don't know if it's coincidental or not, but ever since my resignation, we've seen 25 arrests, and that's very welcome. We have shut down, or the police have shut down, 3 illegal coal blending sites. I understand that there are 30 more that are being targeted. And just the fact that there have been 33 illegal coal blending sites operating in Mpumalanga, where essentially coal is stolen, and we are supplied with discard coal, which doesn't burn so well and which really makes a mess of your coal mills, as well as your ash content in terms of emissions. That tells you about what an uphill battle it is to fight to turn around a utility when the entire state apparatus is not aligned and synchronized to those activities. And that's what we need to make happen. We need to get the state going. Now, again, I think the National Electricity Crisis Committee is getting there, and we are now starting to see action being taken. But it has taken a major crisis, stage 6 load shedding, to precipitate action, to galvanize government into action. And one would have wished, frankly, that it didn't have to come to this, and that we could have made these steps earlier than we actually now have been able to do.
So being frank, let's go back to the Energy Policy White Paper in 1998. If we had implemented it, we would have had an independent system market operator, a state-owned national transmission company, multiple private generators competing with Eskom on the generation side of the business. And the plan at that stage was to have 6 regional electricity distributors. But there were various roadblocks along the way that didn't allow that to happen. And we're now really implementing what we should have implemented 25 years ago. But okay, better late than never. From my side, one of the critical issues that we're looking at is the significant challenge that state-owned entities, both Transnet and Eskom, have faced a huge hollowing out of capacity caused by state capture, caused by voluntary separation programs, which basically enabled the brightest and the best to leave. Not saying that you don't have a lot of bright and capable people in the organizations, but Andre, you're running 90 generating units. Do you have the skill set in the entity to do that? Should it not be reduced to a smaller number and maybe let some other operators take on some of that burden of running some of the other plant? Or will the private concessioning particularly on renewable and self-generation supplement, take over some of that, some of it maybe being defunct plant, being the fact that we've got 11 gigs of existing older generation baseload that will be shut over the next 10, 15 years. Just your thoughts? I mean, from my side, it's the skills and capability issue is, in our view, a critical component in what we've been trying to help you with at the same time.
Yeah, Roger, you are absolutely right. I think we do have a dearth of skills in Eskom. I think that's beyond any doubt. If you walk the plant, you talk to the engineers, you talk to the operators, you look at the state of housekeeping, which is in some instances been completely deplorable. We still have a long way to go to recover our skills. So therefore, I think looking at alternative models of getting the electrons on the grid is in fact very, very urgent. I think many people drive past some of our old coal-fired power stations and they look at the stacks and the cooling towers and they say, well, why aren't these things running properly? And the reality, of course, is that you cannot sustain mechanical equipment indefinitely. And the poorer your maintenance regime is, the greater the impact on its reliability. And that's exactly what happened. There's this narrative that Eskom management under my leadership has been anti-coal, that we want to move away from coal. And the fact of the matter is that that's devoid of all truth. We will remain a large consumer of coal for a very long period of time to come. The last unit at Kusile is scheduled to shut down in 2071 only. But the fact of the matter is that we have in fact been non-compliant with government policy. We have not been compliant with ILP 19, not because we've been accelerating the shutdown, but because we've waited longer than ILP 19 has said we should shut these stations down. So the facts, I think, disprove the narrative that we are somehow anti-coal, but the number of calls that I get from minerals processors, from manufacturers saying, do you have green energy available, because we are losing market share internationally. We cannot sell our processed commodities internationally because of an attributed carbon footprint, is a massive challenge. And again, you can rail about some evil North global conspiracy against South Africa. I think the world doesn't really care about entering into conspiracies of this nature. It is all about how does the world decarbonize responsibly. And you can try and resist it, or you can try and embrace it. And this is what I think we are challenged to do, and what we need to embark on with a lot of vigor and decisiveness.
So my take on that is that we are in the transition already. The process is happening as we go forward. The industry is responding. 10 gigs of renewable energy is just a starting point from our side. In my view, it'll unlock a lot of energy capability and green energy capability going forward. So it's quite a, I think there's a lot of opportunity and a lot of the ability of the private sector to unlock its capability in this space has been opened up by government and by the president. So I think his views on particularly re-stimulating the heartbeat, the electrons on the network are critical. And I think on the just energy transition, we in this process already. We need energy security in conjunction with a gradual process around the transition. But recognizing that coal is going to play a critically important role in our baseload right through to 2050 is quite important to say. So Andre, from my side, it's been one interesting heck of a journey. You were going to ask me a question about the mining sector side, just as a sort of closing point. And again, this is we're not introverts. Andre and I are both extroverts, and we are outgoings as outgoing CEOs of both the Minerals Council and of Eskom. Andre, any thoughts on your side?
Yeah, I think, Roger, the big question in my mind, and this is asked more as a South African than as somebody connected with the energy industry, is South Africa has missed out on two commodity super cycles, and we appear, from my perspective, to be on the cusp of another one. What needs to happen for us to take advantage of this third one and ride this wave to really unlock growth and employment in this economy?
So Andre, spot on, and the answers in our view are very clear, straightforward. So from our side, the security-related challenges that we're facing, particularly from the procurement mafia and others, is an area that needs to be brought under control, and the illegal mining aspect, which the state president talked about this morning. Unblocking the arteries, putting in place the stents that are needed to get the logistics system working. And as you know, we have a board-sponsored recovery steerco underway with Transnet. A little bit late, but at least better late than never. We had been engaging with Eskom all the way through the challenges that Eskom's been dealing with. Eskom, and obviously having energy availability factors and reliability is critical to our businesses. So those are three of the top components. On the red tape side, having an efficient off-the-shelf cadastral system, which the state president talked about with some excitement this morning. Having an online transparent cadastral system is going to be a game changer. Resolving the outstanding mining authorizations with the DMRE is working on at the moment is critical. We also think that shortening license times around prospecting rights, mining rights, and making sure that we have full transparency in the system, which will be enabled through a cadastral system which is being procured by the minister, is spot on. So we're definitely pointing in a better direction on these particular issues. Now we need to see these actually being implemented. That's really our call is not that we don't know what the solutions are working in partnership with government. It's about getting these things done as quickly as possible.
Excellent. That gives one hope. Maybe there is light in the tunnel after all.
So, ladies and gentlemen, concluding, I was called the eternal optimist. I think yesterday was, in fact, there was another name that was given to me, but I remain cautiously optimistic that with the right moves here, we can not only unlock the electrons and unblock the arteries, but enable much greater investment in what I think is a fantastic industry in South Africa. Thank you.
Roger, thank you.